Hi, folks. I'm here. No, you're not supposed to share audio and video for the time being. Only the administrator. So I'm going to start turning some people off to make sure I can find uh, J.R. Campbell. And so I don't see him just yet. So please do not try to share your video. All right. Yeah, we're all here. Give me a minute. Let me see. All right, please be patient with us. This is all new technology for us, so we're still learning. So give us a minute. All right. Maybe can I invite? No, I can't invite. Can I invite? No. Let me see.
All right.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah,
Welcome. You made it.
that was really interesting. I was in a session that was called, or that literally was called team building, but I don't know where it was from.
Well, I'm glad you made it here. I'll be here for a little bit and back in case you need any help with anything. Okay.
Cool. And
Right.
so, am I right in? Okay, so I do get to see people who have joined this session in the list, which is great.
Yeah. Now I got to figure out how I get out of here. I think I have to leave, so I'm going to leave the session and then come back in. So okay. I'll be gone for a few.
Sounds good.
All right. Good luck, guys.
Before you go,
yeah.
The one thing I'm not seeing as a speaker is the ability to share.
So right under your screen, there's a little screen with a red line through it.
Yep.
And you can share screen there.
Okay. All right. I will experiment with that, and hopefully that will work.
Okay. Well, I'll be back in a minute.
Okay. Thanks. Hi, everyone. J.R. Campbell. I reintroduce myself and say thanks for joining the team building session. I have to admit, I normally would try to do something like this in at least Zoom or some form of platform that allows me to see who you are and to get us together where we can talk kind of face to face, at least screen to screen. But this session will be a little bit different in that regard. And so we are going to use the Miro platform, which maybe a few of you got to see some of Margarita's pre-workshop just before the event. So we'll give you instructions on how to use that. But essentially, the goal of this session really is to give you a chance to think about what is resonating for you personally in terms of the topic of the Fashion Tech Hackathon, but also to think about how you might convey not just your skill sets to people in the hackathon and that you can bring to a team, but also kind of who you are. So we're going to start by using a tool that was developed by a company called Partners, and it actually resulted in the creation of an app called Superpowers and a tool or a book that can be used that way as well. But I like it because it gives us a chance to talk about what we bring to teams and also what the implications are for the kinds of superpowers that we have, both good and bad, when we're working with other people. Again, just to reinforce in the context of design innovation, the real value of this kind of work is to think about how diversity in teams actually builds strength, right? So the goal with design innovation is to always think about how can we facilitate the kind of collaborative potential where we create the greatest amount of diversity in every team, because with those different perspectives, and I mean diversity in every sense of the word, with those different perspectives, backgrounds, points of views, superpowers, ethnicities, ages, sort of gender identity, any of that actually helps us to start to be able to see problems from different perspectives. And those different perspectives, when we can respectfully bring those to a team, that actually helps us to, as a team, think about what new innovations we can create that might be unique and different from what already exists on the market, or what we've already seen as a possible solution to a problem. So I will start sharing the screen, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Miro first. And what I'm going to be asking you to do is actually to log into Miro or to join via the link that I'm going to be putting into the chat. So let me make sure that I have copied the correct link here, and then I will put this into the chat. And so here's what I recommend before I put this in there, is that you do continue to keep this screen live, at least a little bit with the Hopin platform, so you're seeing a little bit of what's going on from my point of view as well. But also then you can jump onto the Miro board, and I will be asking you to do some things. So first, I think what I'll do is share my screen, make sure I can do that, and I will talk about the Miro board, then I'll place the link in, and we'll use that to become active on the board. And so let me start with the share screen approach. Oh, I apologize. I actually started this up in Firefox after not being able to get it to go in a different browser, and I may have to actually switch to a different browser because the permissions aren't letting me go. Here's what I'm going to ask, and I apologize for this, folks, but I'm going to have to quit my Firefox app for a moment. So stay in the session. I will be right back. Let's see. Actually, let me just okay. It did seem to make it happen. So I'm gonna assume that is working, and I'm gonna ask you to let me know if you are seeing my whole desktop here. If someone could put that into the chat, just to let me know that. Okay, good stuff. Thanks, Luke and Gabrielle. All right, I am gonna then show you the Miro page first, and we're going to talk a little bit about this because hoping that some of you may have used Miro before, and if not, it's a tool that's really quite easy. What Miro as a tool is essentially a great big whiteboard, but it has a lot of features that I think are really great for collaboration. So first, what I'm going to do, just to kind of give you a sense of things, is I'm going to zoom out, because so what I've done here on this board is created a number of different exercises that we can experiment with this evening. But first, I'm going to talk about superpowers. So the side partner superpowers that I had mentioned before resulted in 21 different superpower cards, essentially. And these superpowers are a great way to start to think about how each of us as individuals contributes to a team that goes way beyond our skill sets and background. So for instance, my background is in digital textile design. I've worked a lot with digital output technologies to create products, both in 2D and 3D. So, in the context of a hackathon like this, I probably would want to take advantage of some of those skill sets. But that's not always the best reason to think about who you're going to work with on a team. In fact, if we only focus on skill sets that people have, we're missing a huge component of who we are as humans, right? As an example, to give you a preview, my superpowers is that there's a primary and secondary superpower that this tool usually recommends. My superpowers are systems thinking and empathy. And with each of those powers, there are sort of skill set abilities and challenges or difficult aspects that are part of those that we can talk about, and I'll show you a little bit more. So these are the range of superpowers that are part of this tool. The idea being that, so let's go back to that example that I was mentioning. What if I managed to assemble a team that had all the right kind of skill sets on it, and I had 5 or 6 people on my team, and we had somebody who was really good at programming and code development, someone who really had a sense of programmable electronics and sensor technologies, somebody who could design and assemble garments if needed, and someone who really understood how to assess what customers want. Sounds like a great team, right? And that kind of diversity is wonderful. But what if it turns out that all 5 of us were vision-oriented superpowers? We were visionaries. Imagine a team that has 5 visionaries on it. What's going to happen? Probably you're going to end up with something like a lot of really interesting and great ideas, but a really hard time deciding and navigating what vision or what idea to work with, and how to follow through with those ideas in a way that that really allows for some of the other skill sets. And so think about that in the context of these. What I have found in my experience with using this tool over the last 4 years now is that it's amazing how even when we have small groups of people, it's really common to have quite a range of different superpowers when they go through this process. By the way, if you're curious, you can go to SciPartners' website. If you Google SciPartners, which is SY Partners, and superpowers, and you can download the app. The app it's a small fee. It's a paid app. That's why I'm not automatically having us use it right now. But the app basically takes you through a series of questions that then determines or informs you what your primary and secondary superpowers are. Okay, so on the Miro board, if I'm coming back to Miro, I want to just give you a little bit of an orientation, because what we're going to do next is do a little bit of reading, research, and then move on to the next step, which will be actively using the board. So Miro as a board is a shared whiteboard space that's going to allow all of us to join the board at the same time and work together. Now, you can imagine if there's, I don't know how many we have in our current group right now, but we had over 150 registrants who were already present on Hopin when we started the sessions. It's going to be a little bit difficult if 150 people are all doing their own thing all the time on the board. And so part of what I'm going to be doing is asking you to visually work in teams on these boards once we get going. And so little bit of an orientation. On the left side over here, left side of the screen, is a toolbar. Most importantly, the items that you're going to be using is T for text. So you can easily, if you click on the T, and activate it, then you can easily click somewhere in space and just start typing, and that will create a typed object. Now, one of the things you have to be a little bit conscious of is if you're using the arrow tool as a means to pick up or to move around an object, it can be really easy to accidentally move somebody else's things. So just be a little bit attentive to how you navigate this. The navigation is slightly different depending upon which kind of device you're using. For instance, I'm on a Macintosh computer. I've got an Apple mouse. In this view, if I hold the space bar, then it allows me to move everything without activating or selecting anything on the screen. Whereas if I don't use the space bar, then it selects the object that I would like it to select. Okay. Cool thing about Miro is it actually has a bunch of templates in it, and I'm not going to go into this, but if you're curious about it and haven't used it before, there are all kinds of great tools for mind mapping and other organizational project planning and assessment opportunities. So if you're curious, I definitely would recommend checking that out. The other thing that you're probably going to use as part of this exercise, beyond just typing, is you might want to add a sticky note or a comment. So sticky note can be added a couple of ways. There's a sticky note button in the toolbar. So if you click, you can choose what color you want, and then you just click and drag it off onto the page. And any sticky note that you put out onto the board anywhere, you can resize it to whatever size you would like it to be. So I can also move this sticky note around to where I want it to go. So I'm going to just put it over here in this open black space for the moment, make it a little bit larger. And you'll notice if I click on it in the middle, it automatically is able to have you start to type in text. It uses an auto-sizing feature so that if I continue to type, it continues to shrink the text and fit it into that space. Okay. So just something to give you a little bit of an orientation there. You may want to use a sticky note. The other thing that you may end up doing if you're working with teams or if you're looking at other people's progress is you might want to actually comment on what somebody else has created. There are a few ways to do that. You can like an object. So, oops, sorry. Yeah, that's a voting tool. If I go over, yes, here it is. Sorry, if I liked what someone was typing on this, when you click or select the object, it gives you the option to add an emoji, and you can pick from a number of different emojis to respond to that. So if you really don't like the idea and you think this is something that we should stay away from, you can give it an angry face emoji or whatever you would like. Okay, so that's a way to give quick feedback when we don't have the opportunity to be working directly with each other or having a direct conversation. All right, so I am going to come back to one other view real quick, and I'm going to show you the descriptions of some of these superpowers. And I will send you I will add the link for you to be able to use this as well. So examples with each of the superpowers, you get the title of the superpowers and kind of what its main description is, and then every one of them has, well, what's the shadow side? What's the dark side of being an empathizer? And if you're working with an empathizer, what kind of things do you need to be thinking about? So let's just use empathizer as an example. An empathizer is someone who has remarkable powers of perception when it comes to other people. With their antennae up, they're very sensitive. They pick up on the needs and emotions of people around them, even when no one is saying anything. And they also learn a person's likes and dislikes, styles and personality quirks easily. And it makes them great stand-ins when the team's trying to build a relationship with somebody who needs to fit in right away. What's the shadow side of being an empathizer? Well, one downside of channeling other people's perspectives so well is that it can make it harder for you to develop your own point of view. You may need to tune out what you're sensing in other people in order to be able to turn up your own internal voice, right? Your emotions are a great source of strength, but they can also paralyze you when you need to take actions that others might not like. And so since you're so sensitive to how other people are experiencing things, you're not inclined in that sense to take actions that might offend them. If you're working with an empathizer, here are some things you need to think about. They're deeply affected by the emotions of people around them. If an empathizer is having a hard time letting go, then you may need to spend some time talking it through before he or she can move on. So while they're great listeners, it can be fruitless to try to vent with an empathizer about somebody else. Their very nature is to push you to see the situation from some other person's point of view. Okay, so all 21 of these superpowers are described in this document that I will share in a moment. And what I'm going to be asking you to do is to look at the Miro board and just ponder which of these do you think is the most likely to describe your main superpower. And what I'm going to be asking you to do is actually decide two. What's your primary superpower and what's your secondary superpower? Okay, so copying this, so when I come back here, we will, I'm going to stop the screen share, hopefully. Stop sharing. Stop sharing. There we go. Okay, so in the chat, just give me a yes or no. Is everybody following along at least and understand what I've talked about so far? Well, at least two people. There we go. All right. Thank you. Tell me if in the chat again. Can you just tell me whether I wish I could hear you guys. This is crazy. But tell me whether or not you have ever used Miro before. Okay, we're getting a little bit of a mix here. Cool. All right. So good. We're going to get some good practice. And you know, our goal here today is not to finish or complete anything. It's really to start something. So we're gonna start with the superpowers. We're gonna talk a little bit about how can we or how might we questions, and then we're gonna go on from there. So in the chat, I am going to paste in the link to the Miro board. And what I want you to do first is I'd like to have everybody click that link and go to the Miro board and let's see if we can all see it. So I'm going to share my screen again so that I can see who's on the board. Okay, so I see maybe one or two. I'm gonna do so I'm gonna bring everybody's cursor to me, which will bring you all close up to my screen. Okay. So. Maybe this means that we're not getting very many people on the board. Let me just. Sorry, I end up having to toggle back and forth. Okay, let me change the. I'm going to change the access priorities on the board, and then we'll try it again. 1 second. Share. Thought I made it public. I did not make it public. I apologize. Okay, so I'm going to change this so that everybody's going to be able to see it. Copy the board link again. And so now I'm going to put it back. I'm going to put it back into the chat just in case it updated the board link, although it looks like it's still the same. So now hopefully you should be able to join the board. All right, I'm seeing a few more people showing up, which is good. Okay, like I tried to do before, I'm going to bring all of your cursors over to me, and the point of this is really just to make it so that we can see each other and you know where I'm looking. Okay, so see that how you all bounced over into the superpowers area once I started to do that. So in this document, in the Google or in the Miro board, I've placed a link to that Google Doc that describes the description of everything. Okay, and so what I'd like for you to do is just take a few minutes. Ooh, we moved around. I'm going to move the I'm going to move this back up here. So I'd like you to click on the link and go to the Google Doc and take a few minutes to read the superpower descriptions. And what I want you to do, and I'm going to give you, let's see, it's 6:43 right now. I'm just going to give you 5 minutes to read through and decide what is your primary and your secondary superpower. Okay, and then when you're done, we're gonna go to the next page on this Miro board. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit just to show you. And I'm gonna zoom in again. Sorry if this is making your head dance around while you're trying to. Okay, so now we're really zoomed in on this next board here, right? And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna bring all of your cursors to me so you can see what I'm looking at. Okay, so once you have decided what your superpower is, I want you to pick one of these team spaces, and I want you to type in your name and then what your 2 superpowers are in the first of a box. And then in the second one in that same column, I want you to tell us all a thing that you've recently learned. So in my case, I put JR, systems thinker, empathizer, and I just recently learned how to play Here Comes the Sun on ukulele. So, so take some time, look at the superpowers app, and go to the link, the Google Docs link, and read the descriptions of those, and then decide what your superpower is, okay? All right, so I'm going to zoom out a bit, and I'm gonna go back to the main window and stop sharing so that if anybody is having issues with this at all, feel free to put some notes into the chat, and I'll try to help you out. And then from there, go ahead and pick one of those teams in the blocks on the Miro board and start to type in your primary superpower, your secondary superpower, and then something that you've learned recently. So we'll start talking about this, and I'll tell you about the next steps at 6:50 in 5 minutes. I'm gonna pause my video for a moment. Also, since we're all getting to know Hopin a little bit, at any time, I believe you can make a request to share or to join the panel. I can have up to 5 people join me in video at a time, and the nice thing about that is that we can then hear you speak. So if you are curious and want to join the panel and be have a direct conversation, or if you've got a question that goes beyond using text, feel free to request to be part of the group, and I'll permit you in, and we can have a conversation live. So just as you're working, if you're selecting your superpowers and you're thinking about putting them into the charts in the next panel, there are spaces for up to 30 some teams. So what I'm hoping that you will do is just pick any one of the columns that is that's part of one of those teams, and we'll fill those out. I would recommend not going to one that's just totally blank and doesn't have anybody else working on it, because I'd rather see you get onto a board or into a grouping where other people are already there. And just in case anybody is having any issues connecting to the Google Doc, I've also added that link into this chat just for reference. Is there anyone who hasn't been able to join the Miro board or is having technical challenges getting connected to it? Thanks, Phoebe. All right. The other thing I'm going to have to do, since we can't speak to each other directly, I'm going to ask: do we need more time? Does anybody still need a little bit more time to be able to select your superpowers and get those added to the board? Okay. Yeah. Let's. I want to make sure you have a good chance to look at the superpowers and really think about that. And you may have seen that under the Design Innovation account name, I did create a poll that you can fill out to let us know what your superpower is. So at some point during the hackathon, please do fill that out. I'm very curious to learn what everybody has, and that's something, that's a way that we can think about who we were working with as part of this event. Thanks for the text, Linda, or for the chat. For anybody joining, yeah, please do go to the Miro board. Hey Zach, out of curiosity, do you mind if I add you to the panel here and see if it joins in as I expect it to? I'm going to catch you if you're not readily available, but cool. So the Miro link has been pinned to the page. Okay, so far we've taken about 10 minutes just to think about superpowers and to start to put those on the board. I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share again. Let's stop for a moment and just look at what what people are putting in there so far. And okay, so. So it looks like we still have some good action on the board, and there's some spots. Rova, if you have the opportunity, now that you've got your Vision and Evangelizer in there as your superpowers, maybe add in on the spot just below that, the sticky note, something that you recently learned. And so here's what I want everybody to do next. If you managed to get your own text put in there on your superpowers and your new thing that you've learned, Rob is having a hard time. Don't worry, you can continue to add things back in there too. Usually, if you double click on the sticky note, it will actually turn it into something you can type directly into. So what I'd like you to do is once you have your items in there, please do go around and look at what other people have put on the board. And I can already see, I mean, it's great to see actually that even though you're selecting your superpowers on your own, that we're seeing a lot of different superpowers already. Evangelizer, Decider, Problem Solver, Visionary, Systems Thinker, Provocateur, and Grit. Leslie, that's a great one. Motivator, Empathizer. So even if we were just to look at team number 3 here, isn't it interesting that even in just a small group of 4, nobody is duplicating their primary superpower? So maybe none of you have met before. In fact, you might all be in different countries right now, but you might actually make a great team if you got together, right? And so we see from Shrishti, for instance, that they've learned InDesign recently, and Hannah's learned Flow 3D or started to. Leslie learned that air fryers are just overpriced convection ovens, which is very true. One of the things I noticed is that a lot of the new learnings seem to center around food, which maybe COVID has helped a lot of us with that we're actually learning how to cook new things that we didn't do before. So go around and have a look at other people's, and if you want to make a comment or add an emoji, feel free. You can, like, if you're the same and you feel like, yeah, I finally figured out how to cook pasta dishes, go in and add your own commentary on that one. Give them some feedback, and tell us what you resonate with. And then once we've done that, just for a minute or two, I'm going to take you on to the next step. So I'm going to zoom out on my view a little bit here. looks like we're mostly falling into the, first 5 or 16 boxes, which is totally fine. Some people still need to, to add some things in if they can. Hopefully that's working. I get the added benefit side effect of having a never-ending loop of my screen if I come back and have a look at it here. So I think that's probably what you guys are seeing as well. So let's use the chat feature one more time. Tell me if you found anything surprising when you started looking at the superpowers and the descriptions. Was there anything that surprised you? Did you realize that maybe you have a superpower that you had never thought of before? What kind of things were surprising? Yeah, totally. I actually had to think about, what is it that I've actually learned lately? Yeah, I agree, Phoebe. There's, I think one of the nice things about the superpowers is that there's a quite a variety there that that maybe we don't normally think about. I mean, I probably a lot of us would think about, whether someone's a negotiator, maybe harmonizer, evangelizer, but I really like, for instance, grit is a great one. Their grit has such an amazing power when you bring someone to a team that really has that trait. And if you can match somebody who has complexity busting with grit, think of what kind of ideas and follow through you might get. Or if you get somebody who's a peacemaker and they're working with somebody who has great ingenuity and is really into making and solving things. Maybe put those persons with a cultural compass and think about how they can address a social issue in a unique way. So what I encourage you to do as you're going through the weekend and beyond is really to think about how could you use superpowers as a way to start to really think more deeply about how you create new teams. For design innovation, part of what our goal really is to help everyone start to become a fearless collaborator. What I mean by that is that if you're a fearless collaborator, it means that you are comfortable reaching out and meeting people who are not like you and working together with them in a respectful and productive way, because you know that by doing so will help you to come up with ideas that you never could have done on your own. And that is the point of something like a Fashion Tech Hackathon, right? That you have the opportunity to partner up with people who can expand the talents that you have and help you to do something that's way beyond what you could have done on your own. And it's the core reason why we really don't want to have anybody be a team of one in this experience. Okay, so let's move on to the next step. I am just double checking. Yeah. Okay, so I'm still sharing my screen, showing you the Miro board. Going to zoom out a little bit, and you can see that there are other things going on, right? So what I'm going to do now is move over to the next board to the right that says "How might we" at the top. Okay, and this board is a little bit more fine-tuned here, but what you're going to do, so you can see as I zoom in a little bit further, I also have an equal number of teams that are in this board. What I want you to do in this next board is I want you to go across and copy. So you can see I've copied my sticky note and paste it and put it into one of the boxes in this new board, and then we're gonna have that new team work on coming up with how might we questions. So you're gonna go back over and find your name with your superpowers. Now don't just drag it across. I want you to keep those there where they were in the first place. But if you right click, you can copy and then paste or duplicate, and then take the duplicate and move it over to the other panel. Yeah, okay, so like Venice and Luke, you guys, they're starting to get it over here. So let's get your copy of your superpowers over into a new chart over here. Let's use, try to fit into one of the top 5 teams. So teams 1 through 5 should get totally filled, and then maybe we need to get into team 6 too, but let's start with just teams 1 through 5. You don't have to stay with your same team. You can move to whichever one you want. But I want you to place your copied sticky note into one of those colored boxes. Because now you're gonna work with this new set of people. So when you move over here, try to look for people who have different superpowers than you, and place yourself in a team with people who have different kinds of powers. Shushti, I think, where did it go? One of the things I was going to say, Shushti, is that I think it will let you, it might let you take the type that you put in there and put a background behind it as well if you need to, but it's unfortunately disappeared. Sorry. Looks like some people are having fun with the text boxes. So just to clarify, all you have to do, if you click on the sticky note that you've added into over on the other side, then it will copy the whole thing if you want to. So you can right click and copy, or you can use the edit menu and go to copy, and literally then just paste. So Command C for copy and Command V for paste. You can always use that. And then it allows you to move them around however you would like. Okay, cool. So we're getting most of those top 5 teams filled in. Please do try to take one of the spots in those top 5 teams. I'm gonna zoom in on this one that's on team 3. I'm gonna try to resize your text here just so that it becomes more visible. Ooh, that's very big. Okay, so Essa, hopefully I'm pronouncing that something close to correctly, but Essa, hopefully that's big enough that people can see now. Ah, she's on in a couple of places. Hmm. Okay, so now we've got most of these filled out. Here's what I want you to do. My experience with these with hackathon style events is that a lot of times we come to the event with an idea for a thing, but often we're not really thinking about why we want to create that thing. And so in design innovation, we spend a lot of time exploring and talking about how might we questions or how can we questions. Because ultimately, if you can think about what are the problems that people are experiencing and then how can we address them, then it gives you a stronger pathway for figuring out how you might design or develop possible solutions. So here's what I want you to do with your new team. You'll notice that underneath your colored boxes with your new team, there's a mind map. And I'm gonna change the color pattern on this top one just to make it more visible. Yeah, okay, this is a little bit better. Trying to get something where we can see all the lines. Okay, so they're thin lines, but hopefully it works all right. So I have started the question, how might we XXXX? What I want you to do is think about, well, what are some challenges that people face that we might be able to answer or to explore through the means of exploring fashion and technology, the links or the intersections between fashion and technology. So for instance, how might we reduce loneliness for elderly individuals? That could be a question that you decide to try to tackle. How might we give an opportunity for mask-wearing individuals that are being affected by COVID to communicate with each other more clearly? So what I want you to try to do is come up with some ideas for how might we questions. And then under so this is a mind map. Once it can be any question, just type anything in that comes to mind, then use the branches to start thinking about, okay, well, what are some possible solutions or ideas that stem from those questions that we can put into the board, right? So spend a little bit of time thinking about what are the real problems that people are experiencing that we can address. And as those start to build, work together with your team to add on thoughts and ideas to your mind map. Just to be clear, if you, as you're working in there, if you double click inside of any of the bubbles, you can select the text and change it, okay? So rather than having to create a new text box, just click on the text, the ghost text that already exists, and you should be able to type directly into that bubble. Team one's like going crazy. They already have lots of things going on. And Phoebe, if you're still here, feel free to find a team to latch onto. She's down there below too. Once you have some questions, like Team 4, you've got a good question here, like how, although it's very complex, you might want to just say, how might we use wearable technologies to help to create a sense of calm? So or something like that, right? So once you've got that question that you're ready to ask, then go ahead and add some new bubbles and throw a couple of ideas on there, just so that you get them out there. Yeah, I think that's a good rephrase. So team 1, just to kind of give you, if you're interested, any bubble that you can create, you can also, if you click on it, you'll notice that there's little blue dots above and below and to the sides. Those blue dots let you create links to other items. So, you know, if we were asking the question, who defines ethical, and we want to link it back to this slow fashion and slow consumption, you know, you can draw links between these different things at any time. All you do is you click on the blue dot, you activate the text that you want, the text box you want to work with, and then you click on the blue dot, and then it allows you to start dragging a link. And then if you don't like the link that you created, you can always just hit it and hit delete. So we're going to take 3 more minutes at 7:20 Eastern Standard Time. We'll pause, and I want to just show you another element here that we can work with if you're curious to bring it further. So take a few more minutes to add some ideas to your how might we questions. as you're working, one thing I want to let you know or make clear is that now that you have the link to this Miro board, you can use it throughout the weekend. So if you connect to somebody that you really want to show them what you were talking about, all you have to do is copy the link to this board and they can log into it as well. Okay, and so feel free to add to this or to use it however you would like, even after this workshop. So we're going to transition just slightly because I think one of the things that you might want to consider is how the theme of connected plays a role in your questions now. So how can you use the theme of connection, individual connection, community connection, or systems connection to explore the question? Sorry, Cherise, I just got back to the hopping board again, but yeah, the question would be just how might we question that you'd be working with. So if you have a how might we question, maybe think a little bit about how it relates to the theme of connection. Okay, so same thing. If you can pause for a moment, take some time to go and look at everyone else's questions. Remember that even though this is a little bit of the hackathon is a competition, we're all going to come up with very unique solutions to these questions. So it's useful to share and to see what others are starting to think about as a way to begin or to get a new perspective. So take some time to have a look at what other people are thinking at the moment. And this might also be a way for you to think about who you want to connect with as you're continuing to build your team. Yeah, there's a good question over here that's connected to Team 9 space, where the question of how can we ease the pain behind ears from long-term mask use. That's a great one. One of the things I realized the other day is that one of my ears is just not it just wants to collapse under the weight of the masks these days. It doesn't. So it's actually literally changing the way my ears behave. So it's an interesting thing to think about. Okay, I'm gonna, even though I know some of you are still working a little bit, and I totally encourage you to come back and work some more, I am gonna scroll along to the right here, and then I'm gonna call everybody's cursors over to mine just so that we can potentially explore one more element, okay? So bringing you all over, jumping you across to the last element, which we'll just introduce, and you can decide how much or how little you want to work with this. But what we just did was we thought about how, instead of just jumping directly into solution ideas, we spent some time trying to think about, well, what are the questions? What are the problems that we really want to address? And so once you've started to think about, well, what are some of these problems that people experience? This is a human-centered design approach, right? Once you start thinking about some of those problems that people are experiencing, you can then develop a persona, or you can imagine a person who is experiencing that problem. And so what I'd like you to do in this chart is, with your team, bring across your problem statement or your question, and then start thinking about a person who experiences that problem. And one way to get further into understanding the problem is by thinking of these four factors, right? Because sometimes what we say is not the same as what we do, and not always linked to how we feel or how we think, right? So what you can do over here is, if you zoom in a little bit, you can pick a colored sticky if you want to use one of these existing ones, and you just go up there and place as many of these things in as you want. So if we were talking about the masks, I could go in here and type in, my ear has started to flop over at the top from masks straps, right? So that's something I said that was tied to that problem. So think of what is the, if you have a person who's experiencing these challenges, what might they say, and what are they thinking? You know, if I'm going back to this, I'm thinking, wow, I'm kind of starting to get embarrassed at how I can't keep a strap on my ear right now. Or what do I do? Maybe I don't wear my mask as much, or maybe I try to look for certain kinds of straps that are low impact. How does it make me feel? It makes me feel uncomfortable. And so you could start to dig in a little bit more deeply, because then as you're thinking about how you might solve that problem, you might actually realize that one of the things you want to do is not just change the way what I'm saying, but change the way I feel, or change the way I behave or act, right? So create a persona, think a little bit about what does that person experience related to the problem, and then what might they say, think, feel, and do. So just take a couple of minutes maybe to add some ideas on that. And then we'll wrap it up in just, I think I want to finish a little bit early because I want to come back to Hopin and talk about how you can connect with each other once you finish this workshop. So in the best of possible worlds, I would have been able to have you guys in like breakout rooms with Zoom, and you would have been able to be talking to each other while you were working on these charts. And so after this session, if you guys want to connect with each other, you know, using any technology, using WhatsApp or any other chat functions, or if you want to use Hopin as a way to have a joint session but work on the board together while you're talking to each other, that's kind of the point. We want you to be able to connect and then work and talk together while you're working on some of these ideas. The other thing I would say, just as we'll start closing up and coming back to the Hopin space in just a moment, but you can create your own Miro.com account space where you can create your own free boards, there's free version that I think allows up to 20 or 25 people to be able to join your team and work with you. But even if without, you can create your own boards and just work with 2 or 3 other people during this hackathon. as a way to communicate that is quite useful. So it's a great prototyping thought, sort of working space. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the screen share, and I'm gonna ask if you would pause on the use of Miro for the moment, and just come back to the main space for a little bit of a roundup, because I want to be able to talk a little bit about what happened or what you can do beyond this. So as you see in the chat for this session, the organizers have already announced that there's the birds of a feather session. So those are sessions where you can basically go into groupings where there's a topic area or a skill set area that you have an interest in or resonance with. So that's a way to meet some more individuals, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Wanted to just finish off on what we went through here, and encourage you to think about it in terms of how you might approach your process for this particular hackathon and maybe beyond. Well, what I hope that we did, and I hope that it meant for you, is that we maybe it might have changed your way of thinking a little bit about what how you might approach this whole event. That you started by thinking about your superpowers and what you bring to a team and how you might use that. Then you use that as a way to think about how do we start to ask questions in unique ways and find people who are not like me, find somebody who's quite different, who can work with me to change perspectives. And then to go further into that, how do we address the problem rather than just try to create new things? And so if you do that, I think what you'll end up with is an approach that leads to a much more compelling and powerful solution. It'll help you to think more clearly about why you're making the decisions you would make and what's important and what's not important as you go through the process over the weekend. And it'll also help you to really think deeply about how you address what the people who are experiencing the problem really are experiencing. So sometimes we don't actually, we often create products that aren't really answering the question or addressing the real problem. So one of the things you can really do as a team is think deeply about what is the real problem that we're trying to address, and what are some new ways that we can tackle that problem. So last thing is, and I'll share my screen just quickly to show other ways of connecting. Margarita had mentioned you can use, as I said, you can continue to use the Miro board, and you can attend the sessions after we get out of this one, the Birds of a Feather. But also in Slack, there's a team building channel. So if you are looking for anyone in particular, or someone who has a particular superpower, for instance, you could use that as a way to communicate in the team building channel. Just remember to look through the announcements on this, and look at the conversation there as well. And then lastly, I'm gonna stop sharing so we can get out of the never-ending loop here. If you go into the people category under any of the sessions that you're in, and scroll down, you can see everybody who's been involved in this. You can schedule a meeting. So as Margarita quickly showed, if I wanted to connect with Shrishti, I could either invite them directly into a video call, or I can schedule a meeting and see if they'd be interested in connecting and talking later. So those are all ways that you can do this. In addition, you can also at any time just go into the networking environment and do the speed dating thing. So you're going to hear a little bit more about that from the next sessions with Margarita as well. So I think I'll stop there and see. Does anybody have any questions for, in regards to what we worked on for the team building? Hopefully, I know it wasn't a chance to have like this direct interaction, but hopefully by working together and seeing what other people were putting on the board, it started to give you some perspective that might get you thinking about who you could connect with and what kind of problems you might tackle for the hackathon. All right. Well, yeah. So if you have any, I'll be here for a few more minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat or request to video chat. And other than that, we have finished off. You're welcome to keep working on the Miro board if you like, and have a great time with the rest of the weekend. Oops. All right, everybody. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and finish off the session. So thank you very much for attending and